Thank you very much for inviting me to come here to speak on this beautiful California winter afternoon. I stand here at the steps of the state capitol of the erstwhile great state of California. I can feel the energy of the history of the legislators that passed laws and regulations that made this state great. I also can feel the pulling and tugging of the recent legislators that have put California in the state that it is now, a state that we don't agree with, a state that is going downhill and collapsing. In the words of Willie Brown was a state legislator and he was the Speaker of the Assembly, and he walked up these steps year after year while he was passing legislation recently. And one time in a meeting, a woman got up and said, I'm white and I don't approve of affirmative action because it's going to hurt my children's chances of success in the future. Willie Brown, Speaker of the House, says, I don't care what your white children do. They're not part of me or this country. In the 1960s, when I was a teenager, the biggest protests took place in the Chicago Democratic Convention in 1964. And one of the leading...
Come right here.
Come get some. Come get some.
Come get some.
Come
Cross the
get
line.
some.
It's not about racism. We're trying to help you.
Hold on. Hey, come back. Hey. Yeah.
Okay.
Tommy Scott. Tommy Scott.
USA! 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 USA!
Okay. All right. Thank you. With that little diversion, one of the leading protesters of the 1968 convention of Chicago Democratic Convention was Tom Hayden. He was one of the founders of the SDS, Students for a Democratic Society. And what he did was he helped lead the effort to stop that ridiculous conflict called the Vietnam War. Well, after he became so famous that he married Jane Fonda, and he and Jane Fonda had a child. And after his protest years were over, he joined the California Assembly and then later became a California senator. And he would walk up and down these steps just as much and just as often as Willie Brown did. And when Jane Fonda and his son married, he married a black woman. And at that reception, Tom Hayden says, I'm so pleased that my son married a black woman because it helps achieve a long-term goal of mine. That goal is the peaceful, nonviolent disappearance of the white race. At that same time, during the 1960s and the hippie era, a very famous woman by the name of Susan Sontag, who was a famous woman of letters, very influential, she was even more pointed. She says that the white race is a cancer on human history. So those quotes that I just quoted you today from Willie Brown, from Tom Hayden, from Susan Sontag, those are moderate based upon the statements that I'm going to read you now. Let's go to what some of the professors are doing. Let's leave the hippie era. Let's talk what's the era of C-SPAN. You have Dr. Kamau Carbone, professor of African Studies at North Carolina State University. This is what he said at Howard University. He says, how are we going to exterminate white people? Because in my estimation, this is the only conclusion I've come to. We have to exterminate white people off the face of this planet. Let's leave North Carolina. Let's go to the state of Hawaii. Another professor, a professor of Hawaiian Studies at the University of Hawaii Manoa, Haunani Kay, wrote a poem. And this is what her poem says. Racist white women, I could kick your face. puncture both eyes. You deserve this kind of violence. No more vicious tongues, obscene lies, just a knife slitting your tight little heart. Okay, that's what comes from the halls of academia. Let's go to the journalism. And let's go to Washington, D.C. You have Nathan McCullough, journalist for the Washington Post. When he wrote his autobiography called Makes Me Want to Holler, he wrote, "The fellers and I were hanging around on the campus in our corner one day, and we saw the strangest thing happen. A white boy rode by on a bicycle. He says, he's crazy. What is he doing in our area? So we ran after him. We caught up to him on Cavalier Boulevard and knocked him off his bike. Ignoring the passing cars, we stomped him and kicked him. With my stick parkers, we kicked him in the head and the face and watched the blood come out of his mouth. Every time I kicked him in the crotch, I felt joy, and my friends kicked him. And when we finished, my friend reached down and picked up the bike and slammed it into his body. Then we all left boasting and competing for bragging rights who had done the most damage." This is from the journalists in this country. Okay, how do the white journalists react to this? Well, you have Maggie Gallagher, a white columnist. She wrote, "I hate the idea of being white." Okay, well, let's go to the arts. The poet laureate of the state of New Jersey wrote the following poem: "Come up, Black Dada nihilism, rape the white girls, rape their fathers, cut their mothers' throats." Leonard Jeffries, chairman of the African American Studies at the City College of New York, a very famous academician. He gave an interview in Rutherford magazine. He said, "The slaves should be waking up, thinking of ways to slit the slave master's throat." The question to him was, well, what kind of world do you want to leave your children? His answer, a world which there aren't any white people. Let's go back to the arts again. Miles Davis, a black jazz musician, who, by the way, when he did a world tour, I did all the legal work to take him on his tour. And one time when he was performing in a foreign venue, I was there watching him as part of my job perform, and he spent the whole time with his back facing the audience playing to the curtain. He didn't care about the audience, but he cares about white people. This is what he said. He said that if someone told me I had 1 hour to live, I'd spend it choking a white man, and I'd do it nice and slow. Okay, well, let's go to California. Let's go to Southern California. And a Hispanic activist, Augustine Cebada, he said, "Go back, you white person, to Simi Valley. You skunks, go back to Woodland Hills, go back to Boston, go back to Plymouth Rock, pilgrims. Get out. We are the future. You are old and tired. Go on. We have beaten you. Leave like a beaten rat. You old white people, it's your duty to die." Okay, let's travel back again to academia in Keene College in Union, New Jersey. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, he said about white people, "We kill the women, we kill the babies, we kill the blind, we kill the cripples, we kill them all. And when we're through killing, we go back to their graveyard and we kill them again because they didn't die hard enough." This is what we're facing from mainstream professors and pundits, media, and academicians. Bell Hooks, a black professor of English at City College of New York, stated, "As I'm writing this essay, I'm sitting beside an anonymous white male that I long to murder." Sister Souljah, a rap artist, "If black people kill black people every day, why not have a week and kill white people?" When a plane crashed and there were many deaths, Malcolm X said, "The death of over 120 white people is a very beautiful thing." Let's go back to California and academia. Rodolfo Acuna, professor of Chicano Studies at Cal State Northridge, said there's a growing feeling that why should we pay for citizens when the majority of them are white? This has happened since the 60s. All the way up to today, there's a movie that's playing in the movie houses even as I speak, and its key actor is Jamie Foxx. And what he said on the recent role is, "I played a slave. How black is that? I have to wear chains. How whack is that? But don't worry, I get free, I save my wife, and I kill all the white people in the movie. How great is that?" When I was a teenager in the 60s, I had to read To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. We all had to read that. In that novel, the protagonists were white, and the antagonists were white, and it was a conflict was a black on white rape. All the townspeople were evil and bad, and it just seethed with anti-white bias. And then Harper Lee said, so that all of our kids could hear this, As you grow older, you'll see white men cheat black men every day of your life. He is trash. Now you fast forward 40 years later, and all 5 of my kids still read To Kill a Mockingbird in the schools today. We have lived with this anti-white bias foisted upon us for over 50 years. We live in an era of anti-white indoctrination that is unprecedented in the history of the world. And it's condoned, promoted, and enshrined by every institution, by the churches, the schools, the government, mainstream media, the workplace. And it's done so by leading figures of every racial group, including the white race. In fact, even at our dinner tables and in the privacy of our own homes, white parents avoid the issue of race. They won't talk about issues of race, but when they do, they will talk about it, they'll denigrate their own people, and they will often promote the anti-white destroying concepts of diversity and multiculturalism. Western civilization and the race that built it is sadly becoming a hiss and a byword for all the ills of the world. But what will happen when that race disappears, as so many of our pundits desire? What will happen when the mantle of leadership passes to the Chinese or the Pakistanis or other? The world, its flora, its fauna, and all the peoples of the world will be for the worse, and they will suffer. The white race is voluntarily abdicating its place in world leadership, and it's doing so because it's ashamed of its own self. The calumny and hate that is leveled against the white race is taking its toll. Sadly, many in our own race come to believe the words of Susan Sontag that the white race is the cancer of world history and the goal of Tom Hayden, which is the destruction and elimination of the white race. These are crucial years for our race and for the people of the entire world. Ron Paul in his speeches, and I've listened to many of them, always makes reference to a remnant. His goal is to search for a remnant. And what does he mean by searching for a remnant? Well, some of his supporters have analyzed that, and this is what they say. When everything has gone completely to the dogs, they, the remnants, are the ones that will come back and build us a new society. You who value your heritage, you who want to preserve your race, your people, this beautiful world, and your legacy in the face of overwhelming odds, you who are not afraid to stand up and be counted as white, as pro-white, you are that remnant. And I speak to this remnant, this Nordic seed. Preserve your heritage, marry within your race and children, and have children and raise your children to be hardworking and honest in all of their dealings. Teach them to be upstanding and moral citizens and to treat everyone in the entire world properly and morally and justly. And if you do that, if you wives, if you love your husbands, and husbands, if you love your wives, then we can work together and build a future that we do not now possess. A future that will entail having a white ethno-state. If you do this, then over time, all of the anti-white screed that is bellowed by those most admired most in this society, by the politicians, the poets, the professors, the actors, and the writers, that blather will fade into an innocuous hum. And we will rise again, and in the words of the man that the government hated, that was incarcerated and died in prison, David Lane, in his words, we will secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. Thank you.
14 words.
Yes, sir.